Hey lovely sex healthy people, welcome to today's video, which is the catch-up flick through for White Dwarf issue 514. We have a fantastic picture of the Thousand Suns Primarch. I forget his name off the top of my head. Bugger. Can't remember who that is. We'll hopefully come across it in the magazine as we go through it. Can't remember. Right, anyway, we have our mission for this month, Shifting Foot for Warhammer 40,000, and then the Inner Chamber for Age of Sigmar. We also have these cards. Now we have one marked with tactical, one marked with fast assault or fast attack, and then one marked with heavy support. Space Marine tactical markings. So tactical troops, fast attack and heavy support. And then we have this, which has 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. We've included a set of combat doctrine reminder cards for Space Marine players as a prelude to our upcoming Space Marine issue, plus our scenarios of the month for Age of Sigmar and Warhammer 40,000. So that's what those are for. Hopefully we'll get a little bit more information about those in the magazine. So we have some readers models, some artwork here from Space Marine 2, I think, the computer game, and these are the Dread Pageant. And we have a Redemptor Dreadnought here from the size of the Emperor. And then creature feature. Okay, what's this then? There have been some strange noises coming from around the studio. The occasional squeak of tiny cheep. The occasional squeak a tiny cheep, and some ominous gurgling and the quiet flutter of tiny wings. Pest control were notified. But before they could arrive, miniatures designer Owen stepped in to explain what's going on. Welcome to Creature Feature, a mini studio challenge that involves taking tiny creatures, usually attached to other miniatures, and putting them in the limelight. Each entrant was provided with a 35mm plinth to showcase their pet project, providing them with enough space to create a small vignette around and bring them to life as a piece of their own right. So there you go. So each of these, I'm assuming, because we do get lots of tiny little things, especially with the Age of Sigmar sprues. I've noticed tiny little like lizards and spiders and flying bugs on the Age of Sigmar sprues. So we seem to get quite a few tiny little things with those. And this is a really interesting way of bringing them to the fore. We have some Chaos Space Marine Terminators here for word bearers. And then Identity Crisis. Kaslev's Reavers. Right. Worlds of Warhammer, Unleashing the Dark Gods of Chaos. So this looks like it's an interview with Phil and Andy from the studio. Worlds of Warhammer are many and various, weird and wonderful, one and all. There's a lot going on in a lot of different war zones. The Imperium has 1 million of them for a start, but I'll let my esteemed colleague Andy handle that. What I'm really getting at here is the variety of different settings across Games Workshop's smorgasbord of game systems, from the Mortal Realms to Holy Terror, and from the bloodstained gridiron of Blood Bowl to the Underhive of Necromunda. So yeah, just talking about the various worlds that you can actually inhabit and adventure and fight in for Warhammer 40,000. We have some hobby hangout, Armies on Crusade, creating a legacy for your collection. A small article here on how to apply transfers. And then some In Death Remembered, using purity seals here. I like my Imperial Fists of Old. 1 Blood Angel per game is rewarded. Sorry, like my Imperial Fists of Old, 1 Blood Angel per game is rewarded with a purity seal for doing something outstanding on the battlefield. I have a second way of recording their legacy. Each time one dies, I paint a tiny scratch on their armour. This is easy to record as anything in the dead pile at the end of the game, but gets a new scratch. Because of the vagaries of removing casualties, some models suffer more deaths than others. Okay. Double Crusade. Big Guns Never Tire. Stygies. Forge World Stygies. 3rd, 4th and 5th expansions. I'm loving this dark coloured armour with the sky blue accents here. Notes on the Great Conspirator. Selected writings on Tzeentch and his puppets. So we've had Nurgle, we had Khorne in the last issue. This one is Tzeentch. I wonder if we will get Slaanesh in the next issue. I don't remember having Slaanesh already. Extract Soldiers of the Great Enemy. The Speculum Infernus. Thousand Suns Rubric Marines here. Purge of Knowledge. So yeah, background fluff on Tzeentch. Prisms of Perception. Tools of Psychic Focus in the 41st Millennium. So this is looking at what psychers use to help focus their energies. And obviously the Grey Knights are pictured in this, as each and every one of them is a psyker. And then Warp Tongue's Hex Pact, a Thousand Suns Combat Patrol. So Madrax Warp Tongue levelled the gilded head of his force stave and uttered the guttural syllables of a spell. We have Warp Tongue's Hex Pact. Madrax Warp Tongue. We have Rubric Marines 10 models, Flamers 3 models, Screamers and more Screamers. So you have in total 6 Screamers. The abilities and enhancements for these guys are default enhancement is Worthy Offerings. Optional enhancement is Ephemeral Form. Secondary objectives, default secondary is Corrupting Congregation. Optional secondary is Expunge All Obstacles. And then your stratagems are Wrath of the Warp, Curse Touch and Intimidating Intrusion. And here is your selection of combat patrol data sheets. You've only got 4 because the Screamers are a double up unit. So again, you know, I really wish that in their card stock they would put these combat patrol cards as card stock. We then have Aspects of War, Warping Realities. We have D6 rolling chart here for Warping Realities. So Incorporeal Forms, Wicked Salvos, Empiric Subsummation, Etheric Storm, Fate's Shield and Transposition. Fate and Feculence. So we have Tzeentch and Nurgle here. Wars of Fate and Feculence. Tzeentch is a skillful and enthusiastic participant in the great game, that eternally raging conflict contested by the Chaos Gods. Countless times has he matched his razor intellect against the brute force of Khorne and outwitted the depraved gambits of the Dark Prince Slaanesh. To the Change God, such amusing challenges offer a fine chance to expand his territories and humiliate his rivals. Yet there is one of his brother gods for whom Tzeentch feels only cold hatred. This is Nurgle, the Plague Father, master of disease and the entropic cycle, whose pox-ridden legions are an infected thorn in the great conspirator's side. So background fluff on the animosity between these two. Plenty. Impossible Fortress. And then we're into Warhammer Age of Sigmar. The Gaunt Summoners. Beware the 9 Tzeentch's Demon Sorcerers. So background fluff. The Gaunt Summoners. And then we're into Army of Renown. Pyrofane Cult. Simmering away beneath the ordered facade of many a Sigmarite city are the fire-crazed Archonites of the Pyrofane cult. These Tzeentch worshippers revel in destructive change, and they seek to bring this about by summoning rageous infernos to burn away the old and usher in a new and twisted reality. So, looks like how you can field these, an army of these, in your Age of Sigmar battles. And then you have war scrolls for the various units. Pyrofane Fusiliers, Pyrofane Great Cannon, Pyrofane Fusel Major, Pyrofane Steel Helms. And then we're into basic training for Age of Sigmar. Ready, aim, fire. We set our sights on the shooting phase in Age of Sigmar. So looks like you have some different scenarios there, and then you have a scenario to ponder yourself. Heralds of Tzeentch. This is a Warhammer and Age of Sigmar clash by the look of it. We've got the Warhammer 40,000 and Age of Sigmar icons up here. I've collected Chaos Space Marines for years, but the release of Magnus the Red, that was it, Magnus the Red. I knew we'd get his name in here somewhere. Magnus the Red turned me fully towards Tzeentch. One of my goals when painting my models was to get the same blue armour as the studio collection, but using contrast paints, which I applied using an airbrush. The Veilborn Cabal by Steve. Okay, so is this his Age of Sigmar and then Warhammer 40,000 collection? And no, Matt is the Prodigal Sons player or collector. Nice couple of flying... I can't remember what they were called for the Chaos Space Marines, the Chaos Space Marine Flyer. Unknowable Tower by Laura. So it looks like it's just a mix of various Age of Sigmar and 40,000 armies. And then we have the Cavil of 7 Scorpions. And then Reader's models. Tzeentchian Beasties. And then Tales from the Grand Narrative. Dan reports on last year's biggest narrative event. The Grand Narrative, the biggest Warhammer narrative gaming event in the world. Several hundred players, 2 huge venues on either side of the Atlantic. Close to 2,000 games being played. A massive background changing story arc that everyone attending can be part of. Shall we go? Said Lyle one day. Interesting. And then we have some people who turned up in cosplay. The Chronicles of Odyssey. This is a Tomekeeper's army. And Styges 8 Hyperion Congregation. So an Adeptus Mechanicus army. And Field Commanders and Vox Loculum. That looks like it would have been a real nightmare to try and organise and then execute. Fantastic. The Falling Blossom. We have an Eldari, an award-winning Inari army from the Grand Narrative. Really nice. So these are these Harlequins by the look of it? They look like Harlequins, but they are predominantly white, so you're not getting much of the typical diamond pattern and swirls on their armour. They look really nice. That's something different, and that's really nice. So yeah, cool. Grand Cathay. Now this is the latest army, I believe, for the Old World. An exploration of the Old World's newest faction. Grand Cathay. Now a lot of this is definitely Oriental influences, I think, with these. I mean, these airships here look like Chinese paper lanterns. You know, almost samurai or Chinese-like armour with this giant here. Yeah, definitely. I'm definitely getting more Chinese vibes than I am Japanese, especially with these dragons. This dragon marking here is very Chinese dragon. Jade Warriors, Jade Lancers, Shugeng An, Lord, Gate Masters. I mean, just look at the iconography on these banners. Cathayan Sentinel, Sky Lantern, they are something else. I mean, it's a really nice looking army. And then we have our Black Library, The Trials of Albarak, Debt of Souls. This is part 3 of 5. So another 10 or 12, 10 or so pages. Then we're into access granted for the bunker. Warhammer Underworld League. So in the last issue, the Kill Team League finished. So we're now into Warhammer Underworlds League. Satellite Uplink, celebrating your rank and file. Carcharodons, or Space Sharks, as a lot of people just call them. Chain Rasps. We have some Dark Angels here. Empire Pistoliers, or Pistoliers. High Fleet Kraken Termagants. We have some Navy Breachers, Plague Marines, and Ard Boys. Then we have White Dwarf play Bunker Bingo. These fantastic looking. These are the ones. Let me just check. Yeah, so these they produced. I don't know if they still do it, but they produced a number of the Army of the Dead in a translucent plastic that allowed you to essentially put more ethereal looking troops on the board, and they are fantastic looking. Just they look like they've had a light a light dry brush of perhaps a white maybe over the top, just to bring out some of the details and make them, you know, look more ghost-like. But they look fantastic. And then the potential answers to the Orders Sir scenario. So there you go. I hope you enjoyed that, and hopefully you will join me in the next video. All right, take care. Bye bye.